Break Europe, I gave you another title.
Courts are becoming more skeptical on it. And if it's via executive order, always remember most of the time it's a fancy way of the president picking up the phone and directing his or her staff to do something to either the legislative or the regulatory right. In trade, where the presidency, the power of the presidency is more powerful, and so the tariff argument is something that we'll probably see under both presidencies, but just to a different scale.
I am curious too what you're thinking about tax policy and no income tax and moving more to some of the models that we see overseas. And then where do we make it up? Is it kind of a value added or a consumption tax? And I do wonder if any of that is gaining any kind of merit as you guys look at different sectors.
Yeah, so there's two things to keep in mind when it comes to the tax argument. Now, that is going to be in the second half of 2025 because the individual tax cuts expire. Now, if President Trump wins the House and the Senate, he gets a majority in both chambers, he can use reconciliation and he can have a very broad pen and do a lot of the things that he wants to implement. Corporate tax rate potentially down to 15%, SALT deduction may go away again, so there's a lot of broad things. But if the Democrats take the House, it has to be more nuanced and it has to be more negotiated. And I will say that those individual tax cuts that expire in 2025 is extremely expensive. And so you're going to have to figure out how you're going to pay for it. And a lot of people have been talking about maybe they're going to get the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, as a way to pay for it. The IRA doesn't even come close to paying for those individual tax cuts. So even though there's a lot of plans on the horizon, and President Trump and both Vice President Harris say they want to do a lot of things, the wonks, the nerds over at the House of Representatives next year are going to really have to try and figure out how to pay for it, because that's going to be an extreme challenge unless they just, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens next year.
I'm sure those nerds are pleased that you've just given them a shout out for that as well. I did have a quick question on healthcare though as well, because that's another cliff edge moment, because there are subsidies there under Obamacare also due to expire. What's the reading from the sector? How worried are they on that?
So, they're not very worried if Vice President Kamala Harris wins. There's this idea that it will be cemented if she does win and that they'll be able to extend them, because it's something that the Democrats have been pushing for the last couple of years. The question, though, is if President Trump wins. So if President Trump wins, this idea of subsidies is not something that, really is something that's flowing through the Republican Party at the moment. But as we saw in President Trump's first term, they tried to do away with Obamacare. And if you remember John McCain's famous thumbs down vote, they struggled to do that. And so, when it comes to healthcare policy, it's going to get into the weeds, I think, in the latter half of next year, because I don't think either president is really pushing broad changes at this moment. It's going to really be driven by the House and the Senate and so forth. And so I think if you get this Harris presidency, you're somewhat safe. If you're a Trump presidency and you're looking at this from an opportunity or risk, you're going to have to pay attention to it.
Interesting stuff, as always. Hey, Nathan, thank you so much. Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst Nathan Dean joining us there.